Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. As we have people come in, we're just going to give it about a minute, but we're going to start probably about 30 seconds as we have folks come in. But welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here today for this amazing topic with our amazing panelist. So just give it a couple minutes, a couple seconds. Let's just see people coming in. Okay, good. We've got a good crowd today, so that's great. All right, so let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to go over, before I officially introduce our wonderful panelist and our topic for today, I'm just going to go over a couple logistical things, just so everybody knows how the next hour is going to unfold. So it's important to mention that the webinar today is being recorded. So everyone that registered will get a follow-up email that will have the recording and any other resources that we feel would be important to share with you. So you'll have that. And we really would love this session to be as interactive as possible. So our panelists are here on camera. They're going to be unmuted. We're going to have a very interactive conversation. So we would love participation from those of you here. You can put your questions into the Q&A section. And if you feel like putting things into the chat as well to interact with your peers that are here, we would love that as well. And in terms of the plan, basically, we're here for an hour, as I mentioned, and how I foresee it is we're going to spend the first half of our time just going through some questions that I have for our panelists. We also have a couple questions that were sent in as part of the pre-registration. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we're going to take your questions live as well. If for some reason we don't get to all the questions, which I hope isn't the case, we'll certainly follow up with answers to those from our panelists through that follow-up email. So without further ado, welcome everyone. We're really happy to have you here to the Empowering Women Leaders webinar. I'm Brenda Stanton. I'm Senior Vice President here at Careerminds. For those of you, we are excited to be Careerminds now from the Keystone Legacy organization. And I really couldn't be more excited about this topic. Obviously, we have a female panel today, but we're at a really pivotal moment in the workplace. DEI programs are under a lot of pressure, and there's just a lot of recalibration going on, I think. And, women are not backing down. We are strategizing, we are being proactive. And, I think we're, as female leaders in the workplace, are always looking for practical tools and ways to navigate the workplace. So that's what we're here to do today from these wonderful panelists. So without further ado, I am joined by three incredible women who bring actually very different and complementary backgrounds and expertise to the table. So I'm going to start with Kathryn Mayer. Kathryn is an executive coach here at Careerminds. I have to get used to that. Executive coach here at Careerminds, and she has over 20 years of experience partnering with global organizations as an executive coach. She also specializes in leadership development within the workplace. She's also an author of 3 books. Her most recent book is titled The Productive Perfectionist, which I love. Another one of her books is Collaborative Competition, A Woman's Guide to Succeeding by Competing. So definitely check those out. And if those titles alone don't intrigue you, then wait till you hear her talk today. So we're excited to have her here. Welcome, Kathryn. And Stamer is also here, a leader here at Careerminds. She is a senior career coach on our career transition team. And Anne brings a wonderful background, lots of expertise, helping women navigate a variety of different pivots in their career. But Anne also brings a deep expertise in executive presence and also resilience. She has a real gift for helping people move through this uncertainty, just with helping gain more clarity and confidence. So Anne, really happy to have you here. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, Stephanie Koprince, my wonderful colleague here at Careerminds. So Stephanie leads our engagement team here at Careerminds, and she also leads our DEI committee. And so Stephanie really, I believe, brings something that's often missing sometimes to these conversations, is that she is literally in the trenches. She leads a team, and she can really, speak to what it's like to lead a team through, again, all these uncertainties and different ambiguity that's going on in the environment that we have today. So, Stephanie, really looking forward to your perspective on things, and we welcome you here. So let's get into it, shall we? We're going to start with a poll. We love polls, so we're going to put this up on the screen, and we would love your interaction with this. So the question is, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now with supporting women leaders in your organization? So if you could all participate in that, that would be great. Will give us some good insight to what we're navigating today. Okay, so retaining and advancing women through uncertainty and change. We've got you on that. DEI program cutbacks, limiting resources and support. Okay. Addressing bias and perception. Well, it's good. It's a good balance. I think addressing bias and perception is leading by just an inch, but we've got a real good balance here in terms of, and everybody, we've got all the above as well coming in. So that is very interesting. I love the fact that we've got this wonderful balance. So thank you everyone for participating in that. All right. So do I share the results, I think, right? Okay. Can everybody see that? Panelists, can you see the poll? Okay, wonderful. So let's stop sharing that. All right. So I'm going to start with a question for Kathryn. So Kathryn, you are an executive coach, right? You coach women at mid to senior levels, and I'm very curious with, as we talked about at the beginning, with DEI programs under pressure, our current political climate, what are you seeing right now for women in the workplace? And I'm curious to see if there's a big difference from, maybe what you were seeing when you were coaching people like 18 months ago. Would love your perspective on kind of what you're witnessing as an external, coach and consultant to organizations and women in leadership.
Great. Thanks, Brenda. Thank you for this opportunity. It's great to be with you and all the panelists. So two big themes, because I do both coaching and leadership development. Really the big theme is that women have to take more risks. And that's like the big idea that I still see companies investing in women, regarding coaching them when they're making transitions. It's just that they now have to take greater risks. And I think of it like today's leader or women leader has to be more like a trapeze artist. And why I think about that as a metaphor is that you have to have a bigger net. Like if risk taking is scary, and it's scary for many of us, especially with DEI, some programs being reduced and the climate changing, it means that it's more on the woman herself. And still many companies are really supportive of it, as I'm sure many of the folks that are joining today. But it does mean that women have to take greater risks, and it's easier to take greater risks if you have a bigger net. So the bigger the network, the safer it is. So that means you have to be a lot more strategic around, networking, asking for help, self-promotion, being politically savvy. I spend a lot more time in my coaching doing those types of things. So if I give you a quick example, I'm coaching a woman right now at a large global financial services firm. And, she wants to they've given her a coach because she's kind of in an unusual role that's going to be more challenging to make managing director. So they gave her a coach. But at the same time, we spend a lot more time like figuring out who she needs to talk to. She has to assert herself a lot more. She has to have a lot more challenging conversations than in the
Mhm.
past. So it's just a lot more strategizing, who's in her network, so that she can speak up more because she is definitely a bit uncomfortable with that, um, but trying to make it safe for her to do that. So that's the
Mhm.
big theme that I'm seeing in coaching. I could stop there, and I could also just share a couple of themes just from the leadership development seminars.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So that's from coaching, one-on-one coaching, right?
That's
You're
coaching
you're coaching her.
one-on-one. Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Okay.
yep, yep. The good news
Yeah.
is companies are supportive.
Hmm.
The challenge is that we have to do a lot more strategizing and risk taking, so we don't fall out of that net. So the second is regarding leadership training and speaking that I see. It really mirrors that same theme I'm seeing in coaching. And I would say two interesting stories. One is I just was asked to give a talk for the Healthcare Business Women's Association, which is a large national network. And I give them my list of topics. And for the first time ever, I had a large organization like this ask me to give a talk on how to ask for help. And we reframed it to that, what we call it the asking advantage. So in the past, the topics were like, and again, because my book was published, I will be transparent about that. It was around perfectionism or in competition in the workplace, some on networking and risk taking. But now, asking for help was just really a surprise. And there were like 70 some people at the session. It was really
Wow.
well attended. I was fearful there might be like five, but I'm like, really? Are women going to come to this? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like me and two people. So that was a surprise, number one. The second theme I'm seeing, and I know Stephanie, when she talks, will probably comment on this as well, is I do a lot of work with college students, and I live in New York City, and well, I do work for some Brute College as well as Fashion Institute of Technology, and the big theme there is networking. Because one of the contacts I had at Brute College came to me and said, Kathryn, we're really concerned because they're going to go out into the workplace and they're networking and they now go to AI to ask, who are they? And what's my
Oh,
identity? And they were like, no, they need to go to
yeah.
themselves first and then they don't know how to talk to people. So that's a big theme around that. And there's a couple of interesting articles that have come out. Columbia University, the MBA program now they run a class on networking by this guy named Paul Ingram, who wrote a very, I think, interesting article around the people that share more and more open are more successful and
Mm.
how to go about doing that, which gets again to more risk taking, right? And how to go about doing that. So that's the other theme. It's just the networking topic has been really very, very prominent, much more so than I've ever seen it. So
Mm.
it's that networking, um, the risk taking, asking for help, which I think is still a big topic. Um, those are really the
Yeah.
themes that I'm seeing that people really want guidance. And the good news is those are trainable skills. Going back to your focus today, these are practical, trainable skills that people, can learn and improve.
Yeah. No, Catherine, that's great. Thank you. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about it's almost something you wonder if AI could ever teach, which is teaching women to trust themselves, right? It's
Great
like being
point.
able to take a risk or take that leap
Yeah.
or whatever. You have to trust yourself first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you can trust anything external. So I think that's really, really spot on. I would love, and it's interesting, networking. As a career coach, I would love you to anything you have to add on to Catherine's question about just what we're seeing right now in terms of the women that you support, and was it drastically different than maybe something you saw 18 months ago?
So I totally agree with everything Kathryn says. And really, it is about networking. And many of the women that come to me, they've never really had to do it. Even if they're middle or later stage, managers, they've never done it. They've been able to move up based on their skill set. So we do a lot around networking. How do you start to set the ambiance for that? What does it look like? Where do we start and how do we move forward? So
Mhm.
I'm a big proponent. Literally every time I meet with clients, I lean into networking. Brenda, you pulled the words right out of my mouth.
Right. Yes. Yes. I completely, and I don't think that will ever expire. Right. I mean, it's all about relationships. It's all about, again, that word trust, self-trust, building trust with others and all that sort of thing. So it's really interesting. So I see some questions coming in, which I'm going to get to in a second. But before I do that, Stephanie, anything you'd add in terms of like, again, you being an internal leader, managing and leading a team each and every day. Are you seeing anything with your team members in terms of areas, especially for women, that were different than a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I appreciate that question and to acknowledge the question in the chat, what do you mean by
Mm,
risk taking? I think in
mm,
general, just high visibility for women is a new layer of risk, especially when you add in the layers of race and ethnicity and class and all of these other layers of intersectionality. It's definitely showing up more in the workplace. And women are showing up more, wanting to show up more of themselves, but also what's the risk in being so authentically myself in the work environment. And so I've been seeing that as a challenge that women are facing.
yeah, that's interesting. So essentially, what you're saying too is that it takes vulnerability, which
Yeah.
I think, again, for women, right, we've been taught that in the workplace. I do think this is um, going away inch by inch, but vulnerability is seen as weakness. I think Brene Brown has done a wonderful job in terms of helping us learn that vulnerability is definitely not weakness; it is strength. But anything, Anne or Kathryn, you'd add to in terms of like what do we mean by risk taking, in addition to what Stephanie said?
So I think I would add a little bit about that it is also about being intentional and building your career. And there's a risk taking involved in that. Don't just let anybody else kind of bring you forward. You want to be intentional in mapping out what your career is. And that is part of the risk.
Yeah. So so essentially, being your own advocate.
Being your own advocate and not depending or leaning so much into believing that someone else is going to take care of you and move forward. So it's the risk of trusting myself for the process and knowing I have the answers inside. And how do I then network or begin to map out how to move up in my career?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Kathryn said, the net trust, and then I think there's a quote, leap and the net will be found.
Mhm.
So, right, it's kind of like trusting again. I don't know why I feel intuitively that's going to be a big word that we use over and over. Anything, Kathryn, you want to explain as far as risk taking before we move on to the next question?
I mean, I think Ann said it well. The thing when I talk about risk taking with clients is try to make them small. Like the smaller, the better. So
Mm,
ask, anything risk taking is going to be different things to different people. And one of the things I have developed is a risk taking profile, a mindset around how people think about risk. So part of it is understanding, are you someone who likes to, there's basically like two mindsets. You want to jump in first, or do you tend to analyze and plan? And then it's like continuum. So understanding where you are regarding risk taking in your mindset, and then start small and taking actions, as Anne has said, that are intentional that move your
mm.
career forward.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Actually, that's a really good lead in to, kind of taking risks in uncertain markets, say, uncertain situations that we're all, facing a lot of turbulence. So, Anne, I believe you wrote recently about resilience in a down market, right? Where the job market has definitely shifted. It's not as plentiful as maybe, again, 18 months ago or a couple years ago. So for women specifically, especially those that are navigating transitions in their career, whether they've been transitioned out or they have a different position, they're being transitioned and are working with you one-on-one, or maybe they're re-entering the workforce. What are the barriers that you see or have seen that maybe just aren't written about enough or that we don't see enough? Like, I always see a career coach like yourself kind of having a behind the scenes look into what people really think, because they're not attached, right? They don't work for their old employer, they haven't landed yet, so they're gonna really you're gonna get to the real truth there.
You definitely will. And that is a great question. And yes, the article I wrote was all about resilience in this downturn, in this time. And I will say I've been doing this for a number of years. In this last 12 to 18 months has probably been the most difficult time period in my history of career coaching. But I see one of the biggest barriers that I'm seeing, and I don't think it's talked about enough, it is the internal kind of narrative shift that women go through after disruption. So it's not just the job loss, it's the confidence hit that many of us take.
Mhm.
We question our identity and often kind of carrying this invisible emotional labor for others while navigating their own uncertainty, because in many cases, they're caretakers of their family as well as the team that they've just been disrupted from or left standing in. So I think with my work around resilience, it isn't just bouncing back, it's about evolving. And women are often doing this evolving quietly because in many cases, women have been taught to be quieter than many men in the workplace. So and it kind of goes back to risks, right? We've been evolving quietly without the same permission to take the risks that often our male counterparts have, to redefine our success, to advocate for ourselves in this next chapter. And the gap between kind of capability and self-advocacy is where a lot of the talent gets stuck. And so what I work with directly on women, and this week alone, I had a client who was really, really had been with her career, doing great, and was transitioned out and was very high level, really very smart woman. And she's literally questioning, what do I do next? I have to be pigeonholed here because this is what I know. So we've been working around her capabilities and her skills and beginning to look at how do you think through what your skills are and where can you transition them into? Doesn't mean you have to plug and play into the exact job for a different company. Your skills and your background can grow you into a different industry, a different job, a different category, and a different life.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about perspective, right? Helping them shift their mindset and also their eyes to see other opportunities that they may not have
And that's
without.
the biggest thing that we teach here, or I coach around, is around resilience, looking through everything you've done and where are your next steps. And also, how long are you going to be in the workforce even? Are you earlier stage in your career? And what are the skills we need to highlight or get in this kind of, if you're missing a gap? And then if you're a little later stage, what is your exit strategy as well? What do you want to do between now and the time you're going to call it quits on your work environment?
I'm curious, like for women, I feel like, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, is that when I hear the word resilience, I often think it means to add more on, to get stronger, to get tougher, and when you said the word self-care associated with resilience, I love that because it's essentially saying you have to take care of you before you can take care of others, right? And so
Yes.
it is about being strong, but also at the same time, not burning out or.
And Brenda, I would add to that to me, resilience is actually about flexibility, the being
Mm,
able to be flexible to see different options and to carry through on them. That is how I like to word resilience with my clients.
love that. Thank you. Stephanie, anything you'd add to kind of, just the mobility of women in the workforce or just kind of dealing with change in general? Anything you've seen or have witnessed?
Yeah, I was going to add that, women often carry really invisible roles, especially during times of organizational stress. So we're taking on all those little extra tasks, emotional tasks, actual tasks that need to get things done, or ones that are quickly to volunteer, quickly to want to help support our teammates. And so just being aware of all that extra and how that doesn't make it on a resume in the same way, all those little extra things that we're doing. And so when we're out there hiring new people and looking at new women, potentially asking questions that dig deeper at the things that aren't on the resume and the other layers that we're doing and holding.
Yeah. It's so true, right? All the stuff that you do on a daily basis to support others or give and give and give. It doesn't show up on a resume as a skill, right? But it is a skill, and especially women especially have that skill. But also I would think too, the skill of learning how to say no.
Mm,
Then taking on all that
yeah.
stuff. But Kathryn, anything you'd have to add to that from your lens as a external coach and leadership development?
I would just say two things. I do teach a course. One of the more popular ones has been how to say no. Just so
Oh,
you
really?
know.
Oh, how funny. Well, not a surprise
There we
there.
go.
Yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah,
teachable. You know,
yeah.
it's very funny. And the second thing, I think, to Anne's point, is that I think I focus also on emotions. Like, every emotion has a story. And I think what happens if you get frustrated in your organization, you can become resigned or resentful. And I definitely see quite a few of that. A bit of that. I do coach some scientists, and we all know what's happened to the scientific community. Um, so, helping people reframe, to what Anne was saying, reframe their stories, around this. And so they have more flexibility, and look at the skills they have around that. But I think a lot of it is helping them understanding how they're feeling about what's happening, and what's a
Yeah.
story that they're telling themselves, and then try to recalibrate that, so that and as well as awareness of the skills that they have. And to Stephanie's point, all the things that they're doing that really are adding to their skill set.
One of the biggest things that I do as a career coach is career transition coaching is pulling out the thread of the storytelling. It is literally imperative because when we're looking at their resume and their document, it is a flat story and it's very flat. It's not telling who they are. So I will really dig deep into the storytelling on what they're presenting in their resume, what they're presenting on LinkedIn, and how they're presenting in their networking or interviewing. To me, it is all about that storytelling and pulling those threads all the way through.
Yeah, that's great. And as you're all speaking to this, I'm thinking, Stephanie as an internal leader, Kathryn, as an external coach, and you as a career transition coach, is that you're essentially a mirror as a coach and a leader, right? You're essentially a mirror for your teammates or your clients to help them see things that they can't, help them see not only blind spots, but also potential. And I think that's really important to mention for the HR leaders that are here that, coaching is a tool and it's something that's teachable as well, right? To leaders is that how to ask questions, how to support, how to, help your team members see things in themselves that they not couldn't necessarily see without you, that sort of thing. So I just thought that was important to mention as kind of a theme for what you all do so well. So thank you. All right. So, Stephanie, I have a question for you. As we talked about, you are leading a team right now through a lot of uncertainty. Not only, obviously we have become a new organization as of January, which we're super excited about. So there's a lot of change, and there's obviously a lot of change going on in the external environment. And so I'm very curious for what you see either as you're leading the engagement team or as you lead the DEI committee. What have you found yourself utilizing for either role or both in terms of what works when creating safety and trust for women on your team? And, again, like, especially as the theme today, especially as they're dealing with very turbulent walls, whether internally or externally, like, what are your tips and tricks around helping them, again, feel safe and trust themselves as well as trust the organization?
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. I love this question. I focus on sort of consistency, acknowledgement, and grounding. So for me, I'm going to continue to follow through on the things that I've said I'll do. I'm going to show up in the same way I've always shown up, even if it's a really high pressure moment. I try not to be quiet on things that matter, even if they're really hard to talk about. My one-on-ones and the consistency of having one-on-ones with my employees, I think is more important now than ever. Even if I don't have answers for you and we sit there and I say, I just don't know, they know that I'm here with them through this moment of uncertainty and I'm acknowledging it's a little scary. We're uncertain. We don't know. And again, I'll let that silence sit and just hold that space with them. What I've started doing is having a team lunch once a week. That's just for fun. We're not talking business. We're just getting together, a little stress relief, a little bonding with each other. My team's virtual and they really appreciate that. And that was something through the one-on-ones I learned was important to them. They were wanting this. And so I'm really trying to listen and pick out the things that they're saying and really quickly making that action. I try to advocate for them when they're not in the room, recommend them for things before they ask. I like to really acknowledge there's a lot happening right now. There's a lot for you. There's a lot for me. And I think not shying away from that comment is helpful for people. They know that I'm not trying to bury what is times of uncertainty, but then I like to bring us back to grounding. Here's what remains true. Here's how we operate. Our day to day has not changed. The value of what we're doing and what we're doing for our participants and for our internal staff is still really important. And so bringing us back to, we're excited, we're nervous, we're floaty. Let's ground a little bit in what I can control. I'm sure that Anne would say similarly for people in transition, they need a little bit of control back. So I'll try to find ways to give them little options that help them feel like they have some control. And I'm not stopping those career conversations. I may not know where your career is able to go here at Careerminds, but let's continue to talk about it. I'm your manager. I'm your mentor. I want to help you as much as I can while we have this connection. And so I really focus on, again, that consistency, that acknowledgement, and that grounding.
That's great. I love, love, love that. And I love what you said around we, because you were acknowledging even you as a leader, you don't know either, right? And you being able to say that creates that equality with your team, right? That, you're not coming from a place of, I know everything, right? You're letting them know that you're in the mix with them is really important. And I also love something too, Stephanie, that you said is essentially bringing it back to our why. Obviously what we do here is it's a business, but at the same time, it's a business that changes people's lives. And so it's just wonderful to hear that you're reinforcing that the work that we do matters and that we need these teammates to continue to do that great work. So awesome. So speaking of Anne, anything you'd add there, Anne, from your viewpoint of assisting individuals that have been or that are in transition, just helping anything you've heard around like what they've appreciated or not appreciated when it comes to, kind of creating a culture of trust.
So I do think giving them the power of running, kind of managing our relationship gives them back power, right? So one of the things I do as a career transition coach is I really let them lead the way. I always have something in my back pocket to talk to them about, but I want to make sure we're hitting what they want. I can't make assumptions that today they're going to want to talk about this because last time we talked about this. Everything is different in where they're going and how they're managing their life and their career and what's coming to them. So I always give them the power. And if I don't have the answer, I don't have the answer. Many times we're uncovering the answer together based on what their particular journey may be. But leading with transparency and authenticity is extremely important. And those that are successful in making the transition quicker back into the workforce or whatever their next chapter is, are doing it in that manner often. So I totally believe what Stephanie just said is really exactly the best way to move forward when you're a leader as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Kathryn, anything from your perspective in terms of like what you've seen that's really powerful in terms of helping people feel safe and supported and that they can trust the organization that they work within?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I just wanted to compliment Stephanie because I think the way she's managing that consistency and
I
being
know.
transparent, I think that's really going to make a safe environment, right? So
Mhm.
that's really key. I think for the women that I'm coaching that maybe don't have a boss as good as Stephanie or 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 just trying to get a promotion is they have to make themselves safe. And the way they do that is by starting with somebody they trust and asking for
Mhm.
help in that way. Starting with doesn't matter what level, saying, okay, I need some help with this. So starting small, baby steps, asking for help, and then again, little by little, volunteering for something. It is about consistent, like what Stephanie said, consistency is really important. They need to, when they show up for meetings, they need to keep, sharing things. They need to notice and acknowledge others, give others compliments. Sometimes that can be the most difficult part of trying to build relationships by making deposits in others' bank accounts. That classic term from that seminal book, Seven Habits of Highly, what was that, Successful People, or
Mhm.
Effective People by Stephen Covey. But this idea that you have to keep, making deposits in people's emotional bank accounts, that's going to make you safer. That's about building that net as that trapeze artist. So that's a big
Yeah.
part of what I'm constantly helping people to do.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. So I'm going to shift to some questions that came in pre-registration, but I also want to just read some of the comments that are here in the chat from Anna, who said authenticity is frequently not appreciated in this anti-DEI culture. We're experiencing women dealing with intersectionality are confronting unnecessary confrontations and even hostility, which makes them uncomfortable taking risks. So sometimes the goal is just to remain employed or at a minimum to be treated with respect. Absolutely. And John wrote, we as coaches need to teach proactive career management. That's definitely true. And Cynthia has said that this session is very timely. I think being able to be honest and transparent in an organization, especially at the leadership level, should be encouraged and welcome. Unfortunately, I don't think most companies welcome this, even if they say they do. And I think, Stephanie, again, just to echo and compliment what you said, is that as Kathryn said, is that your transparency and just availability and just, also the fun piece, right? Like making it fun, I think is just so important as a leader. And then that does create safety and trust. So kudos. All right. So we've got a pre-registration question. What barriers do women still face when trying to advance to the C-suite? So that is a very good one. Kathryn, let's start with you. What barriers do women still face when trying to advance to the C-suite?
But that's still a question, right? And the story, I would say there's still a perception bias. Are women really, do they really want this? Are they ready? Can they handle it? So, for example, the woman that I shared that I'm coaching at this large financial services firm is a mother of three. And when she went to her boss and said, I really want to move up the level, and they were like, but you have three kids. That was their first response. And it wasn't ill-intended.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're all really nice guys. Like, I know these guys are mostly men she works with, but she was like, I'm I'm the sole provider. My husband and I decided he's staying at home with the three kids and I'm it, so I want to, keep rising. So, and she has to keep convincing people that she is ready, that, that is still a challenge. I still see that there still is that challenge, the perception bias.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they're almost having to convince other people of their ambition and
Yes,
justify why they have it.
yes, yes, yes. I mean, you still have to let people know that you really want it, because the assumption is still not there that if you're at a certain level, you have to let people know that I'm interested, because they're not going to assume that you may want it or not
Mhm.
unless you let them know. Whereas with men, in general, they assume, and again, this is a assumption, a generalized assumption, which isn't always true, that men want to keep growing. Where it was
Mhm.
with women, the women have to let them know. And
Yeah.
that, I think, even though research keeps showing, like the latest McKinsey study on women, that women do want to grow their careers. They are ambitious, but I think you do have to let people know that you want to keep growing your
Mhm.
career.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Anne, what would you add to that? What barriers do women still face when trying to advance to the C-suite? Again, as a career coach, I'm sure you've helped them navigate this sort of leap.
So I think going back again to the risk that we talked about earlier, it's the risk of putting yourself out there and being honest of what you want and trying to help map out what that looks like in that company. And that's where I go back to being intentional and mapping it out. Now, there's not as many C-suite roles out there. In many cases, the roles are not as accessible. Another thing that many women might also do is they're maybe not leaning into the roles that will lead them there, which might even include like P&L ownership, right? Profit and loss issues. So really, again, if you want to head there, I always discuss with them, what are the skills that you're missing, or what are the skills you have, and how can we continue to showcase and storytell them? And then the skills that you might have a gap in, let's work on moving them forward so it becomes more apparent to your company or to the next job that this is an opportunity open to you.
Yeah. So again, that voice and visibility, helping buff both those muscles for sure
Yes,
is a theme
exactly.
here. Yeah. Awesome. Stephanie, anything you'd add to that is like what you've witnessed on the C-suite track for women? Any barriers that you've seen?
Yeah. You know, as Anne was talking, I just was thinking it's hard for women. I mean, we're raised in a society with certain messages. And, you know, are women the loudest or most visible in the room? What is their proximity to power? Do they have advocates in those places of power to speak on their behalf and to raise them up and tap them for that? So it's just some of the things I was thinking of.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. Having that support, having somebody like you said before, speaking for your team members when they're not in the room. Uh, that's really powerful.
Can I
All
add
right.
one other
So,
thing?
oh
Can I
yeah,
add
of
one more thing to
course.
that?
Yes,
The
please.
one other thing I would add, and I'm curious if either Anne or Stephanie has comment about this, is that I think one of the other barriers if women want to get to a senior level is they have to be willing to risk failure.
Mm.
They really have to be willing to, fail. And at one point, I have been fired at least a couple times in my career, maybe more. But what was really interesting, and I tell the story in my book, is that when this one big assignment that I had didn't work out, I called a former client who had been kind of a mentor to me, and I told him about it. And he said, I'm really sorry it didn't work out, but good for you for taking the risk, And I wish more people that I knew would, especially a lot of the men that he mostly worked with, would take that risk and fail. You've fallen flat in your face. You have to, scrape yourself off. And, I'm willing to help. And he was so willing to help, like me get restarted. Or it's interesting when I called the women friends of mine and former clients, their first reaction was, "Oh, it's too bad. Oh, it's so terrible." As opposed to like the man was like, "Oh, you're one up now in my view of you. You're ready for more senior roles because you are willing to risk falling down." And I do think that's a skill that can be trained. I was brought up as a tennis player and a competitive athlete, and I lost a lot. You lose a lot, and you have to learn how to bounce back. And I do think that women have to really build that muscle if they want to become a more senior.
Yeah. No, I love that though, because you're right. It's true. Now you're at that level and the water rises to meet you, and you're really not going to you're not going to take a lower role. But, that's really, I love that story. That's great.
May I add one comment on that?
Please.
Because in addition to taking the risk, owning up to it and being authentic, and that I fell flat on my face on that one, actually opens the door. Because if you had not done that, Kathryn, that person may not have actually even A, known about it, and B, been willing to help you moving forward. Or they may have heard about it later through the grapevine. So it's about, yeah, I took a risk. It didn't work the way I hoped. Here's what I learned from it, and here's what I'm going to do moving forward to maybe fix it if you can correct the mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thanks, Anne. All right. So we have another pre-reg question. Do you have any thoughts on how to coach women leaders to lead authentically in male-dominated workplaces? So I think we've been speaking to some of that, but who wants to start on this one?
I can start if you want.
Sure.
Yeah. I've worked a lot in investment banking. I worked for Goldman Sachs and for Citigroup. So I have two thoughts. I have two strategies on this. And I bring these up to my clients. One is to be authentic. You have to decide what you want to share, right? And you have to really, I think Stephanie and Anne has talked about that. What's your story? What do you want to share about yourself? And really, if your hobby is knitting or whatever it is, cats, you're into cats, you have to be willing to kind of share who you are, even if it's different than the majority of men that like baseball or football. Or you have to decide, and there's a very famous story by the former CEO of Pepsi, Indira, I can't think of her last name, but she wrote about how she was a cricket player in India. And when she came to the US, she decided to study baseball. So her big thing was she became a baseball aficionado because she liked cricket, and cricket and baseball are fairly similar. So she really studied that, and it was authentic to her, even though she probably wouldn't have gone into it had she not moved to the US. But she did. So you either have to decide you're really going to do something, you're interested in what the majority is interested in, or if you're not, and I took the other route, I just decided to just focus on what I'm interested in. And of course, I'll listen to their tales about baseball or football, but I'm not really interested in myself. But if I'm interested in the relationship, I'll be interested because I care about the person. So those would be my two opinions, and I'd welcome other challenges or perspectives on that.
No, that's great. Thanks, Kathryn. And Stephanie, anything you add?
So I think you also need to know what your personal values are and what's non-negotiable, right? What are the things that I'm going to stay firm on the line with? And what are the things that I'm willing to bend a little bit more as well? And I think that's something that as women, we often are not encouraged to hold the line.
Yeah, no, I love that, because essentially it's very true in terms of like allowing a situation to mold you versus you, again, that intentionality, setting the mold yourself,
Exactly.
which takes practice and skill too on that as well. Stephanie, any thoughts on the male dominated piece, or what would you add to that?
Yeah, thinking as a manager, at least something that I try to do is anchor my employees and the women in my life, their confidence in evidence. So it's more than you're a great leader, you're a great presenter, you're great at this. It's getting really specific with them and helping them identify what actual skills I'm referencing when I say you were a good leader, you were a good speaker, to help them be able to self-identify that and then articulate that as they try to climb the ladder.
I love that. It's contextual for them, not just using examples that they can take away. I love that. That's great. Awesome. So we have
Brenda, can I just you're going in and out a little bit to me. I don't know if others have experienced that.
Have I? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll move my computer closer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Sure.
All right. So we have another question submitted. Are you seeing any differences with younger generations and what they do / don't want regarding leadership / their career? Stephanie, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah. So, what I do some work with college aged women, and what I'm learning about them is they're really attuned to psychological safety. They can notice when things are performative, and they're really craving transparency in career paths, in pay ranges, in any expectations. They're not wanting to dig through this hidden system in the same way. And fairness is something that is really at the forefront of them. It's a non-negotiable value that they have. And they have this sort of redefined relationship with work. There's ambition, but it's paired with, I also want a balance in my life, and I see value in both who I am as a person outside of work and what I can bring into the workforce. And I think some of that can be a little shift for us over time. But I do think it will add a lot of value as they come in and start to work and help us sort of redefine how we see and create a little individuality from our careers.
Yes, this generation has a lot to teach us in terms of a lot of things, for sure. Anne, what would you add to that in terms of the younger generations?
I think going forward with around understanding communication styles, how you present yourself. So, the keywords of executive presence there, and being open to navigating those issues, because communication is about the verbal and the nonverbal, and about how you're presenting yourself to the world. So that is something that we learn as we, move forward in our career. but that's something that I work with people younger on as well to start to build their confidence around that.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Kathryn, anything to add to what you've seen with, I know you mentioned you work with some colleges and these younger generations of what they want out of their leadership path or just their career path in general.
I think just to reinforce what both Stephanie and Anna said, that their values, right? I think they really want to be in a place where they can live their values and they can really be themselves. They're less willing than my generation to compromise themselves to get ahead. They really want to be able to bring their themselves and what they value to work.
Yeah, bring their whole selves to work, if you will. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Wonderful. All right. So I love all these questions coming in. So this is great. Let me see. What career advice do you, so the question is around women of color, disproportionately affected. So statistically, women of color are being disproportionately impacted by layoffs and reductions in force. What career advice do you offer them? Because there is a difference in many workplaces for white women versus women of color. I'm just trying to read this all. So yeah. So what advice would you offer them in terms of just career advice or sponsorship / mentoring? And you want to start?
Of course, yes, thank you. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to someone in career transition, a person of color, woman of color, we actually start talking about, DEI is less transparent now, as we know. A lot of it's been removed from the company website. So I actually encourage them to really dig deep into the companies, find out who's on their board. Are there women of color on the board? Are there women of color in higher leadership? Are there women of color commenting on posts that they're making? Really do your research on the company to see if they're fitting your alignments. And that has really helped many of my clients be able to kind of move forward. It also is helping finding sponsorship and mentoring. They're digging deeper into their own network to be able to move forward with that sponsorship theory as well.
That's great. I love that too, because you're teaching them, like Stephanie was saying, seeking out evidence, right? So that's great. Stephanie, what would you add to that, to what Anne said?
Yeah, I mean, I think Anne covered it brilliantly. I think
Mm-hmm.
that sponsorship, that's really where people are going to be able to make the most impact, is find other women leaders that you can connect with at organizations, start to build a relationship, and ask directly for mentorship, for sponsorship, for you to recommend me for opportunities, for you to put my name in places where it's not.
Yeah, that's great. Kathryn, anything you'd add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I coach women internally. Women of color definitely have been hit hardest, that I've experienced internally. And again, it's just coaching them to find a mentor and or a sponsor. And they're going to have to take more risk because many times they're not being offered that. So they really have to reach out. And many times what they're doing, a woman I'm coaching right now in a large bank, she's reaching out to other people of color who are leaders that she feels comfortable with and says, here's what's happened to me. I need help. And it's having to be a little bit more vulnerable, but doing it in a safe way. But they really have to advocate for themselves to build upon Anne's
Yeah.
point of intentionality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do
Stephanie's
think
point.
there's definitely some key themes today. I think that we're gonna pull out from the transcript for sure and share with and there's great comments in the chat as well, which I know um if we have some time I'll read them aloud. But I want to make sure that we get into with only about 6 or 7 minutes left. I'm hoping that we can kind of do some rapid fire for each of you in terms of just some takeaways for people that are participating. So we'd love to close with something actionable. So if there is an HR leader, which there are in our audience today, that's going back to their role in supporting their people in a variety of different ways, what's one thing that they can do this week to better support the women on their teams in their organizations? So I would love each of yours perspective, again, from the unique seats that you sit in and the way you support women. So what's one actionable thing that an HR leader can do to better support the women on their teams in their organizations? Anybody
I'd be
prefer
happy
to
to
start?
start.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So my thought was connecting a woman specifically with a senior stakeholder, a high level leader, especially if they're male, especially if they're in the room where decisions are made. Not just saying you should connect, but taking the extra step to perhaps set up a meeting, set up a coffee, connect them so they can get to know each other. Talk about work, talk about who you are as a person, but actually help them make that connection.
That is great. Thanks, Stephanie. Great advice.
I
And
love,
what would you,
yeah, I love
yeah,
that, Stephanie. I think that's awesome. I think
yeah.
I would say take the risk and ask them what they feel they need or want so that you can actually customize it to what they need as well.
Interesting. So you're essentially, it's funny. I wrote something recently about the fact that a lot of leaders don't want to ask that key question about what do you want because they're afraid of the answer, right? They're afraid that they're not going to have what they want or need within that organization. So they don't ask it. And then therefore people don't feel heard, they don't feel seen, they don't feel supported. And so what you're saying is that take that risk, ask it. And even if Stephanie was saying, if you don't have it right now, at least you ask the question. At least they feel value.
Exactly.
They feel heard, right?
And that's where I think Stephanie is doing a great job as a leader because she's asking the question. And if she doesn't have an answer, she's being authentic and saying, I don't quite have the answer yet. I'm going to try and get one for you. Let me put it on my plate.
Yes.
Let me put it on my to-do list and then follow up. It could be a day, a week, a month, a year later. Let them know that you've heard them and that you're still moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Kathryn, what is your one actionable step for an HR leader to better support women on their teams or in their organizations?
I think to build upon what everybody said here, is I think organizations need to invest early and often with women leaders. Like you really need to invest with women right, the first year, their first jobs, the new, from the new all the way up. And I really think if they can do what Ann said, to ask, run some focus groups, ask people what they want, what skills they want, and start, organizing, whether it's, virtual programs, whether it's networking groups, informal or formal, but they really need to invest early, find out what they need, and often.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And Kathryn, and I'd love Anne and Stephanie's input on this as well. I find that sometimes people, when we ask, what do you want or what you need, sometimes they don't know,
True.
right?
Yep.
Which is
True.
true. But I'm curious if you have some thoughts, on content or themes that you've seen. For example, I work with a lot of HR leaders and I hear the term, and Anne, I know you could speak to this, executive presence, right? We need to help this leader with executive presence or emotional intelligence. Are there any in particular for women topics or themes? I know you mentioned a couple with courses that you teach, but any thoughts on
Yeah, I
that?
mean, I think those topics are great. I think the key things that I've had success with in large global organizations are the how to practice healthy competition. For my first book, this idea of collaborative competition, because women tend to be more collaborative. So what's healthy competition look like so that they can be intentional about navigating competition in competitive environments in a way that's more comfortable to them. So I'd say program on what a collaborative competition or the growth mindset. It's aligned with that.
Yeah.
Second would be organizational politics. I think women, anybody who's a minority of any kind, you have to be more savvy than everybody else. You have to be more strategic. Going back to that, um, that trapeze artist, right? You have to really be more savvy about that. So organizational savvy, I'd say, would be second. And third, what we've talked about is this risk taking. I think mindset, I think, goes with the competition as well. Um, and then other professional skills like networking, executive presence,
Mhm.
um, asking for help, saying no. And as you move up, then like organizational change. But I think for women specifically, the risk-taking, the competition mindset, the work savvy, and the presence would be my
Yeah,
key.
that's great. Well, believe it or not, we're at the end. Can you believe it? This did, at the beginning we were saying it's going to fly by, and it really has. So I just wanted to thank you all, Stephanie, Kathryn, and for all your wonderful input and your insights and your expertise, and bringing really your honesty and perspective to the webinar today. So just a couple quick follow-ups. Everyone that registered is going to get an email with the recording and any additional resources that our panelists think of to provide to you after the fact. But again, I just want to thank you all for your wonderful contribution today, and hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Brenda.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, Brenda.
All right.
Thank you,
Have a great
Brenda.
day.
Good job. Thank you.